What happens when a comedy icon walks into a studio expecting laughs, only to be hit with hostility instead? Today, we're breaking down the moment that shocked daytime television and ended with Jim Carrey walking off The View, set in disbelief. Before we dive into the video, please like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts right now, because this story takes a sharp turn fast. Now let's get back to the video. The studio lights were blazing that Tuesday morning as Jim Carrey settled into his chair, wearing the familiar grin audiences have known for decades. He came prepared to promote his latest project, expecting playful questions, light jokes, and maybe a few laughs about his legendary career. But something felt off almost immediately, like the mood had shifted before the cameras even finished rolling. Joy Behar leaned forward, her posture sharp, her expression already signaling that this wasn't going to be a comfortable conversation. "So, Jim," she began, her voice carrying a noticeable edge, "let's talk about your recent comments about the entertainment industry. Some people are calling them unhinged." Jim's smile flickered for just a moment, but he stayed composed, choosing his words carefully. "Well, Joy, when you've been in this business as long as I have, you start to see things differently. You see what's behind the curtain, and sometimes that can be eye-opening." "Eye-opening or delusional?" Joy snapped back without hesitation. "Because to a lot of people, it sounds like you've completely lost touch with reality." The tension rippled across the table instantly. Whoopi Goldberg shifted in her seat. Sarah Haynes avoided eye contact, and Sunny Hostin raised an eyebrow at how quickly the tone had turned confrontational. Jim's expression hardened as he leaned slightly forward. "Are we having an interview, or is this an interrogation? Because I thought I was here to talk about my work, not be psychoanalyzed." "Oh, please," Joy scoffed, waving him off. "Spare us the victim routine. You make bizarre statements about Hollywood conspiracies and spiritual awakenings, then act shocked when someone challenges you." "Bizarre?" Jim repeated, his voice tightening. "Joy, I've been honest about my experiences. If that honesty makes you uncomfortable, maybe the problem isn't what I'm saying." Joy leaned back with a smug look, clearly enjoying the exchange. "Honest? You talk about ego death and cosmic consciousness like you're some kind of guru. Do you realize how that sounds to normal people?" "Normal people?" Jim shot back, a mix of hurt and frustration flashing across his face. "You don't get to decide what's normal for everyone. I've had experiences that changed how I see fame, success, and life itself." The studio audience fell completely silent, sensing this was spiraling into something far more serious than a typical daytime segment. Cameras subtly adjusted, making sure every reaction was captured. Joy pressed on, refusing to let the moment cool down. "You made millions entertaining people, and now you want to attack the industry that made you rich and famous." "I never said it was evil," Jim replied, his voice steady but strained. "But there are unhealthy parts of it. The obsession with validation, the way people are treated like products. Is it wrong to talk about that?" Joy interrupted sharply. "What's wrong is pretending you're some kind of victim when you've benefited more than most people ever will. You made a fortune making people laugh, and now you want sympathy." Sarah Haynes tried to redirect the conversation, her tone cautious. "Maybe we could talk about Jim's upcoming project." "No," Joy cut in, visibly annoyed. "This matters. Jim is spreading anti-industry rhetoric, and viewers deserve answers." Jim leaned forward, hands clasped tightly. "Conspiracy theories. I've shared my personal journey. I realized fame and money didn't fulfill me. How is that a conspiracy?" Joy fired back immediately. "Because you imply the industry is fake or manipulative. That feeds dangerous narratives." "You're putting words in my mouth," Jim replied, frustration growing. "I never said manipulation. I talked about feeling empty despite success, about finding meaning beyond fame." Joy laughed dismissively. "I've seen plenty of celebrities go through phases like this. Most don't do it on national television while criticizing the system that made them relevant." The atmosphere grew heavier by the second. Whoopi looked uncomfortable, Sunny stared straight ahead, and Jim appeared to be reaching the edge of his patience. "You know what, Joy?" Jim said quietly, his tone suddenly intense. "I came here hoping for a real conversation about art and life. Instead, you're determined to frame me as some delusional has-been." "I'm not framing you," Joy replied coolly. "I'm asking why you think it's appropriate to use your platform to criticize an industry that gave you everything." "Everything?" Jim repeated, his voice rising again. "Do you know what it's like to lose yourself in a persona? To feel hollow, while millions adore an image that isn't really you?" "Oh, please," Joy mocked. "Poor rich actor having an existential crisis. Nobody forced you to become famous." That comment landed hard, and the shift was immediate. Jim's face flushed as he stared at her, the room frozen in silence. "Nobody forced me," he said slowly. "But nobody warned me I'd be sitting across from people who take pleasure in tearing others down for choosing to grow." Joy narrowed her eyes. "I'm asking you to take responsibility for your words." "I have," Jim replied firmly. "More in the last few years than ever before. What I won't do is apologize for honesty." Whoopi finally stepped in, trying to lower the temperature. "Jim, when you have a platform, people listen." "And that's exactly why I speak truthfully," Jim said, turning to her with respect. "I'm sharing my journey, not issuing commands." But Joy wasn't finished, and the clash was far from over. Joy jumped back in before the moment could settle, her voice sharp and unwavering. "Your journey affects real people, Jim. When you talk about the industry being fake or unhealthy, you're not just talking about yourself anymore." "What people?" Jim asked, his patience thinning again. "The executives who treat actors like disposable products. The agents who care more about money than well-being. The publicists who sell carefully packaged personas instead of truth." Joy shot back instantly, clearly prepared for that answer. "The crew members, Jim. The writers, directors, producers, camera operators, and staff who rely on this industry to support their families. When you paint Hollywood in a negative light, you diminish their work too." Jim shook his head slowly, frustration written all over his face. "You're deliberately missing my point. I've never attacked hard-working people. I'm talking about a system that values profit over humanity, image over authenticity, and appearance over mental health." Joy leaned forward again, voice turning prosecutorial. "And yet, you gladly took the money from that system while condemning it now. Doesn't that sound a little hypocritical?" The studio went quiet, except for the low hum of equipment. Jim paused, clearly choosing whether this was even worth answering. "You know what's hypocritical?" Jim said finally, his voice controlled but firm. "Pretending that asking for authenticity is some kind of attack. You've been in this business long enough to know what it does to people, yet you defend it because it worked out well for you." "Personally," Joy's expression tightened immediately, "I'm defending an industry that creates jobs, entertainment, and economic opportunity. Maybe successful people should show a little gratitude instead of constantly complaining about how hard their privileged lives are." "There it is," Jim said quietly, a sad smile crossing his face. "Gratitude. You think success means silence, that because someone made it, they should stop questioning anything." Joy rolled her eyes. "Jim, you sound like a self-help book, written by someone who's never faced a real problem." That line hit hard, and everyone could feel it. Jim's demeanor changed completely, the humor gone, replaced by something raw and personal. "Never faced a real problem?" Jim asked softly. "Do you know anything about my childhood? Growing up poor? Watching my father struggle to keep our family afloat? Learning to use humor as survival because pain was everywhere?" Joy hesitated for a split second before responding. "I'm not denying your past, Jim, but let's be honest. You've been wealthy and famous for most of your adult life. You've had the resources to address those struggles." "Resources don't erase trauma," Jim shot back, voice rising. You can't buy self-worth. You can't pay to fill the emptiness that comes from losing yourself behind characters and expectations. Sarah Haynes tried again to steer the conversation away from the edge. Maybe we could talk about how these experiences influence your creative work now. I think people would genuinely be interested in that. But Jim's focus stayed locked on Joy. You want to know what I've learned? The people most threatened by authenticity are usually the ones most invested in their own masks. Joy's jaw tightened visibly. Are you psychoanalyzing me now, Jim? Because last I checked, you're not a therapist. And last I checked, you're not a licensed authority. On personal growth, Jim fired back. Yet you've spent this entire segment trying to tear apart my experiences. The tension was reaching a breaking point. Sunny Hostin looked deeply uncomfortable, while Whoopi Goldberg shifted again, clearly weighing whether to step in. You know what I think? Joy said, her tone dripping with condescension. I think this is a phase. I think you'll come back to reality. And when you do, you'll realize this spiritual guru act was just another character. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jim stared at her, cycling through hurt, anger, and disbelief. Another character? Jim repeated quietly. What if all the characters I played were the act? What if this person sitting here trying to speak honestly is the real me? Joy shrugged dismissively. Then I'd say the real you is a lot less entertaining than the fake one. The silence that followed was deafening. No laughter, no chatter, just shock rippling. Through the studio! Jim sat still for several seconds before lifting his head, eyes clear and steady. You just proved everything I've been trying to say about this industry. Joy tried to interrupt, but Jim raised his hand. No, this matters. You just told a human being that their authentic self has less value than a performance. That belief is exactly why people burn out, break down, and feel disposable in this business. The other hosts were now staring at Joy openly. Whoopi shook her head, and Sarah looked visibly upset by the direction things had taken. I didn't mean it like that, Joy said, but her voice lacked conviction. You meant it exactly like that, Jim replied calmly. And that mindset is toxic. It tells people they're only valuable when they're entertaining. Joy bristled. You're being dramatic. Fans loved your comedy, not your philosophical speeches. My philosophical speeches, Jim repeated, smiling for the first time in a way that wasn't warm. I shared my pain, my growth, and my truth, and you called it rambling. He slowly stood up, unclipping the microphone from his jacket. This is why I don't do many interviews anymore, because vulnerability is treated like weakness, and honesty gets mocked. Joy sensed control slipping away. We could have had a civilized conversation. We could have, Jim replied, removing the mic carefully, but you chose mockery over dialogue. Whoopi finally spoke up clearly. Jim, let's take a breath. We can reset. Jim turned to her respectfully. Whoopi, I respect you deeply, but I won't sit here while someone attacks my character under the cover of journalism. This isn't journalism, it's bullying. Joy stood as well, voice rising. Bullying! You came here knowing tough questions were part of the job. Tough questions aren't insults, Jim said firmly. Attacking mental health, dismissing trauma, and mocking growth isn't accountability. The audience sat frozen, some already recording what they knew was an unprecedented moment. You're being unprofessional, Joy snapped. This is live television. Jim paused, looking genuinely saddened. You know what's truly unprofessional? Inviting someone here just to tear them down personally instead of engaging with their ideas. He turned toward the cameras briefly. This right here is what I've been talking about. The belief that people only matter when they perform. Joy tried one last time to regain ground. You're making a scene. You made the scene, Jim replied calmly. I'm just refusing to stay in it. Jim stepped away from the table, and the studio felt like it had lost oxygen. The moment wasn't over yet, and the fallout was about to get even more intense. Jim paused near the edge of the stage, the weight of the moment hanging thick in the air, like everyone knew this was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The cameras stayed locked on him, and you could feel the control of the show slipping away in real time. Sarah Haynes made one last attempt, her voice softer, almost pleading. "Jim, maybe we can shift gears and talk about what you're working on next. I think people really want to hear that." Jim turned to her with a faint smile, one that carried gratitude mixed with resignation. "Sarah, I appreciate that. I really do. You seem genuinely kind. But this stopped being about my work a long time ago." Joy folded her arms, clearly frustrated. "So what? You're just going to walk out? That's how you handle disagreement now?" Jim stopped and turned back to face her, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. Walking away from toxicity isn't running. It's self-respect. It's choosing not to waste energy on conversations where listening was never the goal. The studio audience remained completely silent, stunned by how far things had gone. Even the crew looked uneasy, glancing between each other as if they knew this clip would be everywhere within minutes. Joy scoffed, trying one last time to regain authority. "You came on this show to promote yourself. If you can't handle criticism, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all." Jim shook his head slowly, disappointment written all over his face. "That's not criticism, Joy. That's character assassination. You questioned my mental state, mocked my trauma, and told me my authentic self was less valuable than a performance." He gestured lightly toward the table. "That's not journalism. That's cruelty wrapped in a microphone." Whoopi finally spoke again, her tone heavy with discomfort. "Jim, let's slow this down. Nobody wants it to end like this." Jim turned to her with genuine respect. "Whoopi, I know that. And I truly respect you. But sometimes the most honest ending isn't the neatest one." Joy's voice cut through sharply. "This is live TV, Jim. You don't get to control the narrative." Jim looked directly at her, eyes steady. "That's the problem. This industry is obsessed with controlling narratives instead of hearing truth." He turned toward the cameras once more, addressing viewers at home with a clarity that felt deliberate. If you're watching this, and you've ever been told that who you really are isn't good enough, that you're only valuable when you perform or please others, understand this. There's nothing wrong with you. Joy tried to interrupt again, but Jim continued without raising his voice. Growth isn't weakness, self-reflection isn't instability, and questioning systems that profit from silence isn't negativity. The tension was unbearable now, the kind that makes even seasoned television veterans uncomfortable. Joy's voice rose, edged with panic. "You're turning this into a lecture?" "No," Jim replied calmly. I'm turning it into honesty, something this space clearly isn't comfortable with." He took a step toward the exit, then stopped one final time. "You asked me to take responsibility, Joy. This is me taking responsibility for my boundaries." Joy threw her hands up. "So that's it? You just leave and play the martyr?" Jim turned back slowly, his expression firm but not angry. "This isn't martyrdom, this is choosing dignity over spectacle." The audience gasped softly as Jim unclipped the last wire and placed it carefully on the table, the gesture deliberate and unmistakable. "For years," he continued, voice steady, "I played characters that made people laugh while ignoring who I was underneath. I'm done pretending now." Joy looked visibly shaken, though she tried to mask it. "You're overreacting." Jim met her gaze one last time. "No, Joy. I'm finally reacting appropriately." He began walking off the stage, footsteps echoing louder than expected in the silent studio. As he reached the curtain, he spoke without turning back. "And one more thing, you don't get to decide when someone else's truth becomes inconvenient." With that, Jim Carrey exited the set, leaving behind stunned hosts, a frozen audience, and a show scrambling to regain control. The cameras stayed live as Whoopi attempted to reset the segment, but the damage was already done. Everyone watching knew they had just witnessed something rare, someone refusing to perform on command. Clips of the moment spread instantly online, sparking fierce debate. Some called Jim brave, others called him dramatic. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. This wasn't just a walkout, it was a rejection of the rules. The controversy didn't fade. It grew. Viewers questioned whether the interview crossed a line, and critics argued over whether honesty still had a place in entertainment built on image and control. And that's the uncomfortable truth at the center of it all. Jim didn't just walk away from a chair, he walked away from an expectation that silence is the price of success. The real question isn't whether Jim should have stayed or left. The real question is why telling the truth still feels like an act of rebellion on television, meant to entertain, not confront. Because in the end, what rattled the room wasn't anger. It was authenticity, refusing to be edited, packaged, or dismissed.